Okay, today this is Randy, and I am going to do a little comparison between some of the old Rainbirds and the Nelsons as they were growing over the years back in the 60s and 70s. So let me pull out this one, and then originally we had this, which this was the Rainbird. Notice no diffuser pin. Still got a deflector, but the deflector design is with a different design. And of course the design for the deflector on this one is with pretty much what we see on a lot of the sprinklers today. Surprisingly, that it's enough different so that when I take this off of the Nelson sprinkler and put it on a Rainbird sprinkler, as I had showed you in one of the previous videos, it's not the same. But let me just set that there. So I think Nelson started out with the diffuser pin on the plastic before Rainbird. The first plastic Rainbird looked like this, and you can see that again, they're still very similar. They had a closed design in the middle here. This is certainly much smaller than this one, but this has certainly a different design in the way that's done. Something I found odd is that this has a hole here and this one doesn't. But again, you know, if someone wanted to put a diffuser pin in here, it would have been easy enough to drill a hole and put a screw there. So that's not a big deal. And I thought that when Rainbird came out with the PJ arm, which is this one, I thought that was their first all plastic, and it's not. This was actually their first one. I never liked this one. For some reason, the way they designed this, the scoop or the spoon on this one is just, I don't know, wasn't very smartly done. And I think about the same time, they also, let's see, did I bring it out? I did not bring out the other, the design that they used for their in-ground sprinklers as opposed to above-ground sprinklers. These were designed where they could be used in the big in-ground sprinklers, but the new design that Rainbird had come out with also changed the design of the Rainbird body. So anyway, what I wanted to do was to show you this. So basically, when Rainbird came out with a plastic sprinkler, this is what you saw. And of course, you had the brass arm. I just took these out of a washing solution to try and get some of the dirt off, and it's still coming off. Anyway, so that's the comparison of those. And then Rainbird's full all plastic, and then they went to the PJ arm. And then you can see this one's a little newer than this one because this has the metal stops on it. This has the plastic stops, which would have been a little newer design. Interesting enough, they upgraded their design so that Even the newer ones look like this, which, no, that's not a rainbird. This one's a rainbird. And I just recently, I took and bought several of these, which is just like this model rainbird. But if you were to look in here, this one says made in Mexico, and on the back side, it says rainbird here. This one doesn't have anything there and has nothing here. So the basic design is the same, and they look like, you know, it looks the same. But, so for example, when you look at it from the back end, you can see this is much thicker in the arm and the tail than this one. Something else that changed over the period of time, which I want to show you. So early on, and I don't know if you can see this, like if you were to try to disassemble the trip pin mechanism so you could replace the spring if you had to, because they would break just as well. You had 4 pins that you had to try and bring together so you could get this to come out. Well, on the newer design, they went to just 2 pins. So it was a smart change, but that was what they did here. So get these interchanged. And you can see also that even as these sprinklers evolved, this particular model, you can see it's changed a little bit on the back. They changed the way the journal tube is designed. Most of the journal tubes back in the day, and even still the brass ones, mostly have the slot, so you can take and screw them out and get them, pull them apart. This one is different, and the washer is different. And I don't even know whether this actually pulls apart or whether it unscrews, and I haven't got there yet to try and test that. So I'll find that out eventually. Oh, what I wanted to show you was, so the sprinkler that I had showed you, I think it was video number 2, and I showed you that there was just one side of the stop, and there are sprinklers out there that only have a single pin for the stop. This one is actually broken, and which actually came from originally one of these Beta 2 Nelsons. So I took it off there and put it on here. Let's see if I can find it. I don't know if I have it here. The original. Okay, so the bearing on these early Rainbirds, what they did is let's see. So there's a washer here, okay, and what they did is they actually had a slot on both sides of the sleeve, and the washer was designed with a little notch or a little like a bump on each side, and it fit right into that notch, which is different than what you see today because it's just all smooth. This is an interesting design with this particular with this washer because it's actually fitted in there tight, and this comes down on it pretty aggressively. Also in the design of these, and even the makeover here design, they did the same thing. So kind of a little messy. What I used to do back in the early days is trying to improve the movement and the ability of these things to run, because a lot of times they would run but then they wouldn't run. So what I did is I cut off the back end, and you can see that I cut that off. And of course I did that on more than one. I don't have it there. And while I'm at it, so I don't have the sleeve for the original design for these. But these are the stops that they used. It was all metal stops. You can see I got a whole collection of them pulled together here and held together by this wire. But that was the design, and you know, when they worked really well. Wasn't perfect, but it worked for the purpose. So here's a good example of what happens when you try to take the reversing mechanism apart. So you got these four little prongs here on both sides, and even on this side too. But here's one, and if you look at it from the side, you can see that the pins are broken. So basically, for this part, it didn't matter that it went in there without any snap or anything like that. It was really important that the top piece still had the pins, otherwise it would just fall out, which you don't want. So the main thing is this body here is a beta 2 Nelson body, and you can see I got the Rainbird arm in here, which is the one that I've had and have shown you in a couple of videos. And so Nelson started out with a regular spoon, and then for some reason they didn't change the naming convention when they went to the PJ arm. And so you see the PJ arm, a little different design than what Rainbird used, as you can see on this. Still effective. And it's very, very, very smooth. It wasn't fast, but it was very effective, and it worked at lower speeds. One of the things that even with the newer model PJ arm that Rainbird used here is it still was very smooth on the edge. But if you find a sprinkler like this one, which is a real cheap, this one says DC is the name on the label there. Doesn't have a name on the back side. This is the dual nozzle one that also you've seen in one of my videos. Also, what's unique about this is, besides the fact that it's a Chinese model, is I was talking about the arm, the PJ arm. So instead of it being smooth, straight out like Rainbird designed, and Nelson also followed, this has just a little bit of a lip so that it kind of curls around, and instead of it going straight out or just pretty much straight out, they have it going to the side. So it's like at a 30 or 45 degree angle instead of straight out. So the other thing that's unique, and I want to show you this before I go back to this. So this was the deflector for the Nelson, and this is the deflector obviously for the Rainbird, and they look identical. Basically, you would think that they're the same. But when you go to, well, Rainbird put a little notches in there, I guess, to help diffuse the spray. But the design with how this sits in there is different than with the Nelson. And I don't know if it's because of the way Nelson did their knob here or not. You know, the parts are essentially interchangeable, but when you go to set this on max on the Rainbird with this particular part, you know, over the Rainbird, it won't go to max. It's still got a pretty heavy duty deflection on it. So I think that Nelson came out with the diffuser pin on the plastic models before Rainbird did. And of course, again, you look at these two and they look like they're the same. And you think they're both Rainbird. That one says Rainbird. This one doesn't say anything at all. And even the way the nozzle is designed, it looks the same. The spray and everything, you think they're the same, but they're not. And I mean, this actually feels pretty decent, but for some reason, it feels just a little bit lighter than the Rainbird. And I haven't tried it out yet, so I will get a chance to test that eventually. So here's one of those Rainbirds as well. And this one has it's a little bit older model since it has the metal diffuser pin. And of course, they did use the notches in here, which Nelson did not. So this one is not as new as this one, but it is essentially the same sprinkler. But you see at the bottom, the journal tube and the sleeve are different than the newer model here with a different design. And I don't know whether this, see, it doesn't even look like it will even come apart, where this one I know can be unscrewed. So not sure if that was intentional for some reason or not, but when you look at the connection of the journal tube to the base there, it looks like it's glued in where it doesn't come apart, but I haven't tried. So I want to show you two more things. And I had mentioned previously about the rain time sprinkler. And this is one of the later models, and what they did is they modified the arm, so they put the hole here and put this basically a side pin, so that when the arm went all the way back, and because of the way this was designed and the arm was designed, it had a tendency to go back a good distance, and if you get a little extra pressure, it's hitting the back end. Well, if it does with this newer design, you see this comes out and it hits the water and pushes it back the other way. Now I had mentioned this before, but this actually is all internal. This one actually works, and if you see right here, that comes up and then limits the movement of the arm, so it will reverse. They had to make some improvements to it, so this is a little heavier duty than the original models, because the original plastic was was wearing out. And so then they would, like skip past this hitch. And so they did another thing is they made this pin here so that it had a slight angle on it, and they made a slight angle in the arm here so that they would meet and not slip. So that was an improvement. But as you can see, this is the arm, and they extended the arm because it wasn't quite long enough, I guess at times. But again, it followed the original Rainbird design with a solid reversing mechanism. Obviously today all the sprinklers are designed with a pin that you can flip up like this one, so that you can go full circle if you want. And so even in the latest designs, you flip that up, and of course you've got full circle. Now also the difference in these is they all have, all these newer designs have a spring in them. So there's a lot more pressure on the journal tube and the washers down here. So that's something that I'm not sure why they felt like they needed that, but maybe that's so that it would run a little bit smoother, and I don't know what the problem was without the spring. You will notice that, and eventually I'll bring out some of my brass sprinklers, which I didn't do today. And I have mentioned another brand that was out there that was, again, part of my childhood. And I know you're going to look at this and you go, well, that is an odd looking item. And I know if I put this on the base and turn the water on, this actually would probably still work. Now, what was neat about this was it had this screw on the pin up here. And so the idea was that, so the pins were shorter for a good reason, so that it would go all the way down like that. If you can see this, you can see that the pin is flat with the top. And then this was designed so that, see this notch here? You could take and set it all the way up if you want this to be tighter, or all the way back if you want it to be looser, or anywhere in between, whatever happened to fit for your water pressure. And so I've got on the lighter setting right now, and if I got carried away, I could take this apart briefly, which I will show you, which is kind of neat about this. Take and pull the arm out just enough. So now the notch is on the other side. I'll put this back together. And so I'm going to put it on the tightest setting on the other side. Oops. And of course, it's much looser than it was on this side. But now if I want to take and loosen it up even more, so if I loosen it up too far, you see it doesn't want to work. So I put it about there. Okay, it went all the way to the end. But this is not very tight, but tight enough for the sprinkler to work. And this base is, I think, part of these sprinklers. And again, I haven't taken this one apart, but this one just happened to be in my collection of 50 years, sitting there still, all in one piece. Most of them are in pieces that I can put together at any time. So I think I covered everything. I don't know the model numbers of each of these, and that's one of the things that I don't have. This spring is actually broken, even though, I mean, basically the spring would break and I would take and thread it back through to get it to work again. And in Florida, the springs were the biggest problems with these sprinklers, and they would rot out. And of course, with the reversing mechanism, there'd be a point at which those would break as well, and then it wouldn't return. And I think that's part of the reason why Nelson was smart by making a full cover here, which helped protect the spring inside. Smart design. And eventually, as you can see, Nelson eventually changed and went to this open design. And I took the pin out of there, so. What else? I think that pretty well covers it for now. And the kids are having a good time out there. So I will stop with that, and I will figure out which sprinkler will go on there next. Probably probably put this inexpensive look-alike on there and see just how well it does by comparison. One nice thing about the plastic diffusers is that you can turn them. These metal ones, they get to the point where it's very hard to turn on some of them. Yeah, see, this one won't turn at all. But again, all these parts have been sitting in my sprinkler box for 50 years plus. And here I am, I'm pulling them back out so I can share this with you and some of the information that I've learned. And if you like what you've seen, please press like, and hopefully you will subscribe.